Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're checking out Ultimate X-Men issue 1 by Peach Momoko. The Ultimate X-Men make their big debut in an awesomely weird first issue that focuses on Hisako Ichiki, the mutant known as Armor. Mirroring what Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Black Panther did, Ultimate X-Men is an origin story first and foremost, building off of the premise that the maker took Earth 6160's superheroes, taking key elements that made these heroes exist, and in Hisako's case it's obviously the X gene, which we see begin to activate in her when she is gifted a charm by a very strange literal shadow of a man. The book mostly focuses on Hisako's relationship with a boy named Tsubasa, who over the course of the issue we find out was relentlessly bullied by people at school, especially one of his teachers, leading to him to develop depression and eventually leading to him to seemingly commit suicide. This is the inciting incident on why Hisako cuts herself off from most of the people and stops coming to school, since as we pick up this issue, we learn that she is returning to school for her graduation and she's barely been the entire year, and it's because of this one incident, because she has some responsibility in Tsubasa's death. This is again a really interesting thing with all of these Ultimate books, where each issue has done a sort of take on the whole Spider-Man, power and responsibility thing, and how being a hero is taking responsibility. And I like that that is shown here as Hisako spends the latter half of the issue facing her fears and facing this and taking responsibility for what happened. Her fear or her sins or her secrets all manifest in this shadowy being that gives her the little charm. Now obviously to me this feels like it's a visual representation of like depression or those thoughts in your head that can bring you down, and I like that that is the inciting incident, as the assaults on Hisako from this thing eventually lead her to develop her armor powers, and it saves her from a car accident, an event we actually saw in Ultimate Invasion as stuff was kicking off in the universe. It's so cool that all of the writers and artists are like doing stuff like that and sort of hinting at each other's books here and there, and it makes the universe feel a bit more connected, and like this is all happening at once. Like the floodgates have been opened now that the maker is gone, and the heroes are kind of rushing back into the world to fill the void and sort of course correct this Earth a little bit. It's also quite interesting how Peach is treating the birth of the mutants through the eyes of Hisako, as the girl finds it kind of cruel that whatever is happening to her, and dredging up all her past sins and secrets that she has hidden away and kind of tried to forget and tried to shield herself from. Another really interesting thing is that obviously mutants in the past have been used as like analogies for people who are different, and that can range from myriad of different things, from people who identify as gay, people who are of a different minority, different religion, race, anything like that sort of stuff. And I like that here there's kind of like an inverse happening where Hisako isn't the one who was sort of ostracized from everything, it was Tsubasa, and that kind of leads me to my theory that Tsubasa is armor, is the armor that protects her, because we find out over the course of the issue that Tsubasa kind of had feelings for Hisako, and it's shown through all of this really cool stuff with charms and buttons and messages, and Peach does a really good job of explaining this in the back of the book with the lexicon, which is like her take on the Hickman Krakoa era lore pages, except there's a bit more visual, there's a bit more of a visual element to it, and I like that we get to explore that part of Japanese culture with stuff like, if a boy gives you the top button of his shirt, then that means he likes you because it's the button closest to his heart and stuff like that. And I kind of like that they're playing with that idea with how mutants are different, and how Tsubasa is the mutant quote unquote, and the one who was ostracized, and then is the one who also ends up protecting Hisako. At least that's how I read it, that he is the armor, or like his spirit is inhabiting the armor or something. It definitely feels how it was written and drawn, and I could be completely wrong, but that's along with the lexicon kind of showing all of these different things that he did for her, it kind of makes sense to me, and I think that's really quite cool. Now, while the book does its best to introduce us to the character, there is still a lot sort of left to the mystery of it all, and obviously you've got to do that for a comic. You can't just reveal everything in that first issue, because then like what do you do for the next couple of issues? You got to kind of pace it out a little bit. But I do wish there were some things made a little bit more clearer, and after 3 readings the book did start making making a lot more sense to me, and I was picking up on things I didn't get in, you know, the initial readings. And I think this got to do as well with the fact that the book feels very much structured like a manga than a traditional Western comic, and feels like a chapter of a manga more than just an issue of a traditional X-Men comic. And I kind of like that we're actually getting that sort of stuff with this book. It's not just going to be your usual run-of-the-mill comic book. It's going to more rely on the writer's, you know, heritage and where they come from with, you know, manga and anime and stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that affects the structure of the story and where we go from issue to issue and what is revealed to us through these issues. On top of writing, Peach Momoko also does the art. That's what they are mostly known for. I'm sure many people have seen their artwork more than their writing, and their distinctive style fits Arma's and the mutants' characters' creations so damn well. It's weird looking with some great body horror stuff earlier on in the issue, and surprisingly just like a lot of general horror as well, since the story does deal with stuff like depression, suicide and stuff like that. So there's a lot of real horror sequences in this book, especially near the end of the book where Hisako begins developing her powers a bit more, and it kept reminding me of other great Japanese artists like Junji Ito or Kentaro Miura, and I love that sort of stuff. I love that this is a book that can get creative with its artwork and not be afraid as well to show some pretty hardcore things like people being hung and, you know, stuff like that that you never really see in a normal comic book. And again, this is the Ultimate Universe. It's a bit more edgy, but I like how they're using that as well. It's not just edgy for the sake of being edgy. It's telling the story and hitting you really hard where it needs to hit you really hard in the story. All in all, Ultimate X-Men issue 1 got off to a really strong start, setting out its initial story with Arma really well, and I think Arma is a really interesting character to hang the birth of mutants on as well. It's not your usual Wolverine or Cyclops or Jean Grey or Charles Xavier. It's a lesser known mutant and one who hasn't really gotten a starring role all that much, so props to them for picking Arma as the character to kind of kick this all off. And it also had a really relatable story of, you know, childhood crushes and stuff you go through as a teenager, depression, all that sort of stuff, you know, the secrets you keep as a child. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the book explores that in future issues. I am going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10.